Whether Leroy Sané signs for Tottenham or not, many Tottenham fans will tell you that the reason that we don't sign top players, whoever that may be, is because we don't spend the money on wages. The problem is it's not that straightforward. Firstly, let's look at some perspective when it comes to Tottenham's wage expenditure versus the highest wage bills across European football last season, because it's very easy to forget how much of a financial powerhouse the Premier League is and how difficult it is to compete financially. When you look at a table like this, right, this is littered with Champions League sides, right, minus the odd few. Now, we're 14th, right? But you might as well chop this list almost in half and go from 1 to 9, because there's 100 million difference between Villa and Arsenal there, pretty much. The problem with those 9 teams is that you've got City, Liverpool, Manchester United, Chelsea and Arsenal, right? And then Villa on the cusp of that. So 5 out of them 9 teams are English. So already, whatever you spend, it's a highly competitive Premier League in which it's a massive risk to go to that next level. And it's something maybe Daniel Levy, just being risk averse in that aspect, has really held back from doing. Now, the problem Tottenham have is if you take those 5 English sides that make up the top 9 and question how they got into that position, Manchester United and Liverpool are built off legacy, right? 2 biggest sides in England. Although Manchester United have been reckless financially in recent years, they still have a certain lure for players when it comes to signing for their clubs. But this is where it gets really interesting. Already you've got 2 teams there who have that legacy, and that's incredibly difficult to surpass, whoever you are. Now, interestingly, we move on to Manchester City and Chelsea. Now, this was done in more of an artificial way. There was a clear shift in their mentality. Now, this obviously coincided with new owners, splashing the cash, and not just on transfer fees, but on giving, I don't want to say average players because it's disrespectful, but good players vastly superior amounts of sums than they probably ever should have been paid. But this was to just push them over the line, to attract players to the club who otherwise wouldn't have been attracted to them. And obviously, as we know now, with financial fair play, doing what City did and Chelsea did at that time to wrestle away dominance from other sides and make them attractive, you couldn't really do it nowadays. And you look at Newcastle, who probably could have done this to a degree. I don't know exactly, but they can't because of the regulation. So that's an interesting one. And if you take those 4 teams in the Premier League already, Liverpool, Manchester United, Manchester City and Chelsea, now you get to the next side. Now, as much as it pains me to say this, but this is where Tottenham should realistically aspire to be as a football club when it comes to marrying up year on and off the field goals. Because Arsenal don't have the legacy appeal of Liverpool and Manchester United. They don't have that instant overnight influx of cash that Chelsea and Man City had. They've built everything off their own backs as such. And okay, there's always more that teams could achieve, but they're in a position where they've overcome that stadium transition. They've been in a position where they can spend £100 million plus on a player, and it was every penny well spent, in my opinion, for Declan Rice, even for the Madrid goals alone. And yeah, okay, maybe they're spending a little bit too much on certain players for wages, but they're taking that risk. And your second 3 seasons running, so it's not a bad compromise. Of course, you've got to go to that next level at some point, but Tottenham, if we are to try to show ambition, we've got to be trying to match Arsenal first. Now, the problem is, though, is this is assuming that money is the only reason that Tottenham don't attract the very best players in world football. Now, we haven't attracted a world-class player at the top of their game for decades and decades, right? A lot of Tottenham fans look back at Van der Vaart. Yeah, okay. Klinsmann, probably. So that's a long time ago. But you see, the thing is, a lot of Tottenham fans are saying, well, now we're champions of Europe. We know. I look at that trophy and it just represents relief for me, right? Ending that 17-year trophy drought, first European trophy in 41 years. Subjectively for Tottenham, that's incredible. But you've got to get into the minds of players who would be prospective Tottenham signings and ask yourself, why would they want to sign for Tottenham? Now, despite the euphoria from winning that Europa League and being in the Champions League next season, I would still argue that we were in a much better position to attract a certain calibre of player back in 2019, 2020, even though we lost that Champions League final, because you have to look at where we were as a club. The year-on-year progression, although that kind of papered over the cracks of what was an average Premier League season, I mean, in comparison to this year, it seems like it was amazing. But there are all the signs there, the players there, that Tottenham were still up there as a club. We didn't capitalise, we had the stadium, and obviously the rest is history in that respect. Now, the added problem that Tottenham have now, aside of the fact that we don't spend competitively on wages, is that we are a side over the last 2 years in freefall. Now, despite that Europa League success, if you look to Tottenham in the form of a graph in the last 2 years, it's basically a freefall from 1st to 17th. Now, Tottenham fans, and this is the whole point of it being subjective, will go, it doesn't matter. Context, injuries, we sacrificed the league for the Europa League. Now, that's all well and good for Tottenham. But a player looking to join the club aren't going to go, oh, look, they won the Europa League, champions of Europe, they know what they are, I'm going to sign for them. So if you're not paying wages, you've got to look and think, what gives you a reason to believe that's going to drastically change? Because this isn't just because of a few injuries and then obviously sacrificing Europa League. That probably happened around about this bit here. This is a culmination of after the first 10 games of last season. So if this was over 2 years, it'd make even unprettier reading. And if you're a top player, whether you're at the beginning of your career or you're at some stage kind of in your peak or whatever, you're going to look and think, do I want to be a part of a side that's lost 22 games in a season? What reason do I have to believe that that's going to change? What reason do I have to believe that the injuries aren't going to continue and I'm going to be part of that statistic? So there's many more problems that Tottenham have at this moment in time. And I don't think the Champions League opportunity glosses over many of them. So whether Leroy Sané ends up signing for Tottenham or not, or we pursue other interests, the point still remains. I think Tottenham fans need to meet any potential signing with realistic expectations as to whether they actually want to join our club. Because Champions League is fantastic, but then you also have to look at that and go, well, are Tottenham going to make even the slightest dent on the Champions League next season? Based on the last few years of where we've headed as a club. And this isn't just Ange Postecoglou. This has been a decline ever since 2020. Whatever managers come in, we've progressively just got worse. So the fact we've got a trophy last season is a blessing, but ultimately, when it comes to signing players, I don't get overly excited because I've seen it year in, year out, and we always end up left disappointed, right?